This is Zestology. It's the podcast all about energy, vitality and motivation. I'm Tony Wrighton, wandering the streets of London and recording this podcast intro with a lot on my mind. Since I recorded the interview that you're going to hear in today's podcast, coronavirus has kind of taken hold, hasn't it? It's spreading seemingly fairly quickly around the world. From kind of small beginnings in China, now it seems, most countries are affected in some ways, and those that aren't are kind of preparing to be involved. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there as well, and there's a lot of anxiety. There's definitely a lot more people suffering from anxiety about coronavirus than there are suffering from coronavirus at the moment, but in some ways that's understandable because it is obviously something that is very dangerous, especially if your immune system is compromised in some way. So I wanted to briefly address it in the podcast because this podcast is about health and wellness and energy, and that's on a lot of people's minds at the moment. I also don't want to offer any advice as such, firstly because I'm not a kind of medical expert, but secondly because what I tend to do on this podcast is be a bit of a jackdaw, kind of cherry pick the very best experts from around the world and take their advice and follow it, and I think that's a particularly good approach in this situation. There's a couple of people that I follow that have been coming up with some good advice, and in this podcast we talk a lot about immunity as well, and it's becoming increasingly clear that what you want to do is you want to be in a healthy state, as healthy as possible, with your immune system as strong as possible, so if and when you do potentially contract a virus, whatever it might be, you're able to fight it off. So this podcast is about immunity, and more on that in a second. There are a couple of other places that I think found some good information. Dr. Ben Lynch is someone that I've mentioned before on this podcast, and he's been coming up with some excellent videos and advice on his Instagram, so I think that's worth checking out. There's a site called examine.com where they basically just take the science and they apply the science to what we know about this virus and how it might affect us and what might work in terms of nullifying its response, and they look at the evidence, the scientific evidence for certain supplements alongside that. And then I think the third thing, and possibly the most important thing, is once you've kind of informed yourself well about what is going on at the moment, coming to terms with the anxiety and not knowing what's going to happen, coming to terms with not knowing, letting go. I mean, it's, I'm not particularly good at letting go. I like to be in control of the situation and have all the facts at my disposal. And I can't help thinking in this particular situation where we're at the moment, that's just not going to help. Doing the things that you know are really good for you, sleep and relaxation and exercise and hanging out with your family, whatever it might be the most important thing of all. Because we just don't know how this is going to play out. So an unusually serious start to this podcast on Zestology today, but I hope that helps a little bit. This podcast is about immunity and immune support, which is excellent. I'm kind of doing a gut health challenge for March, and I'm particularly pleased that I'm doing it because I want my body to be in the best shape possible anyway, and it kind of all starts in the gut, doesn't it? I'm speaking to Wade Lightheart today about gut health. He's from BiOptimizers, and I am bioptimizing my gut. I've kind of partnered up with them for March, and I think this is particularly important. It's quite clear to me when my gut is good, I feel so strong and healthy, and when it's not, I'm just very low key. So I'm always keen to really sort out my gut. And you'll hear we kind of mention immune function, and we mention various ways that you might sort out your gut in this podcast. Wade Lightheart is someone, he's pretty high level actually. I mean, as well as running BiOptimizers, he's a 3-time All-Natural Bodybuilding champion. He's an advisor to various think tanks and institutes, and he really knows his stuff. So he's very well qualified, and I'm very, very pleased to have him on Zestology, and I'm looking forward to the Gut Health Challenge over the next few weeks. Do join me and let me know how you get on with that as well. And as regards to coronavirus, I have a feeling that it will kind of continue to play out over the next few days and weeks. As I say, it's not something that certainly I feel qualified to offer any advice on at all. It certainly is clear though that we just want to make sure that ourselves and the people that we love are in as healthy a state as possible, and I certainly think that's physically but also mentally the way that we think about this. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Hope you enjoy this interview. Here is Wade Lightheart on Zestology. I feel like my gut's in, if I had to give it a percentage, it'd be, I'd say, 65 to 70%, but I know there can be some work to be done. So I think you can help me with this.
Well, it's important that we talk about that, because there is a continuous degeneration on that unless you're addressing that. And I know here in the United States, 12% of the emergency hospital visits are gastrointestinal related issues. That's people going to the hospital in an ambulance in an emergency situation. And it's scaling up largely in part because of what we've done in the last 150 years for food production and food distribution, which has compromised our gut health, even though it's provided more food to us, but not necessarily better food. And that's one of the issues. Yeah.
In fact, there's just a big article that came out over here today about this new definition for food, which is ultra processed food, which, it kind of does what it says on the tin. But when you're eating ultra processed food, they've done research on it. People get more ill, get more degenerative diseases, go downhill quicker, and then a lot of mood-based stuff, mental-based stuff as well. And so what you were just saying there about how it gets worse unless you do something about it, is that because I know your company's mission is to improve our guts. Is that really the case? If we don't proactively take steps, it's going to get worse?
100%. That's an absolute certainty. And the unfortunate thing is a lot of the health challenges that people experience today are really, it's normal, but that doesn't mean it's supposed to be that way. And so one of the big problems that I think that we have is that we're comparing most of the data research coming out of medical institutions and stuff is based on quote unquote normal levels. Normal to what? Normal to where we are today, not necessarily compared to what is optimal. And if we look around, the life expectancy for people has increased, but the health expectancy has actually decreased. So we're living with ailments longer than ever before, where we require a compromised life. And that's across the board in every civilized country in the world, which is frightening statistics.
It's horrifying, isn't it? So how did
really
you,
is.
I'm kind of looking at really getting in depth into the nitty gritty here, because I think that this is one of the things that you can spend quite a lot of time looking into it, and it's quite hard to know exactly the course to take. And how did you arrive at this step where you're kind of now doing what you're doing, but obviously you started out as an all-natural bodybuilding champion 3 times over?
Yeah. So what happened is I was competing at the Mr. Universe contest in 2003, and leading up to that contest, I had to go on an extremely rigid diet, and I was there for 11 months, very low. And that was kind of I'd competed the year before of multiple contests, and there was a lot of damage done, and I was following what I would call, quote unquote, a performance diet that wasn't really a health diet. There was a differentiation between those two. Oftentimes, performance diets compromise our health in ways that we don't imagine. So once I did that, after the contest, after the Mr. Universe, I gained 42 pounds of fat and water in 11 weeks. So I literally increased my weight. I competed at 176 pounds, so that's 80 kilos. I would get into that class. So think about that. That's about what? Almost a third of my weight.
Oh, that's gross.
In 11 weeks.
So presumably to lose the weight, you'd followed a certain diet, but it wasn't like an optimized, as you might say, diet. No.
No, it was it was a pretty restrictive
Go on,
program.
what were you eating?
At the time, I ate 5 things. I think I had 2 shredded wheat biscuits in the morning. Every one of these had like 50 grams of protein with it in a powdered form.
Oh my God.
And then I had 25 mini rice cakes on my second meal. And my fourth meal, I had 150 grams of potatoes on the second one, and a small salad on my last one.
That was like the healthy bit.
Yeah, that was it. That was it. Now, I was ripped. The pictures look great, but afterwards, I always say I went from Mr. Universe to Mr. Marshmallow, and then I met a medical doctor. But then he was Dr. O'Brien. He was in his 70s or 80s. He wouldn't tell his age, but he was quite old. But he was super vibrant. And he could look right through it, and he had all this energy. And I was like, man, this guy has got it figured out. And I said, I attended his lecture, and I went up to him after. I said, I don't understand what's happened. I've got a background in nutrition. I studied exercise physiology. I'm at the peak of my game of what I would call cosmetic fitness, because bodybuilding is really a cosmetic industry. It's just the way that you look. Fitness industry is the same thing. I said, but something's wrong here. And I've got all this training, all this experience, all this expertise, and obviously it's not working. And he said, Wade, tell me something that changed my life. He said, Wade, you learned to build the body from the outside in. You haven't learned to build the body from the inside out. And I thought that makes sense. And what he put me on a course of is I started to use enzymes and probiotics and minerals and all these different things to kind of replenish what I had done over the years of training. Because, the Mr. Universe was the cultivation of a lot of years as well. It wasn't just that small part, that small window. That was just the finishing blow, if you will. And so after that, it was like, man, I got to get my life in order. I followed his regimen rigidly. I transformed my health in a very short period of time. And within 6 months, not only did I have my physique back, but I had my vitality, my energy. I never felt better. My cognitive function, everything was radically improved. And Matt, my business partner, started coaching all these people around the world to try and help them avoid those kind of situations, because we knew that was going to be something that would happen to them. And if they continued down this journey, because what I was doing was very common as far in the performance world. And we got about 15,000 people over the next 4 years that we were able to work with and get all this real world data.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So this is kind of like the difference between like clinical experience versus, in a medical study, because you can extend a period over years as opposed to like a 12-week study. And the improvements were across the board when we put people on digestive health correction programs. And so we did that, and then I made a comeback in 2007. I came back while they were saying, I did the whole thing. Went to the World Championships again. Won everything. I did better at the World Championships. My first time I got 13. That time I got 5th, which is about the absolute limit of my genetics, because the guys above me they're just another, like we're not in the same genetic field, and never had the rebound. Felt great didn't have the achy joints, didn't have the brain fog, didn't have any of the things that I had previously that everybody accepted as part of my sport. And at that point, I wrote a book about it, started spreading the message around the world. And it's been nothing. And about five years ago, we actually rebranded the company as BiOptimizers, because we realized we wanted to end physical suffering, activate awesome health. And the first pathway to do that is to get your digestive system corrected, because it's a single canal from your mouth to your bum. And the reality is, when you eat food, it's not inside the body. You have to digest, absorb, and utilize that and convert it into energy units and building blocks. And most people is compromised because of what we talked about earlier with the food production and distribution methodology of our how we get food nowadays, and that leads to a variety of problems down the road.
Right, yeah, and I mean that's really interesting story, and it's also great that you managed to make your comeback and presumably slightly healthier second time round and still do really well and not have the kind of fallout afterwards.
I was healthier. I carried more muscle. I felt better and didn't have the recall. So my system was working better 4 years later as I was older as an athlete, which is very unusual. And so that was a testament to me. It's like, okay, you know what? We really got something here. I've got all this data. I need to share this with everybody, because I know where the end goes for everybody at whatever point. Might be 40, might be 50. Who knows when that's going to be? And some people, it's when they're teenagers, they have problems.
So the theme of this podcast, let's bioptimize our own guts and mine as
Yes.
well, from a purely selfish perspective. I definitely feel that I've become more and more attuned to the way that certain foods make me feel, physically and mentally as well. I've made some tweaks based around a low histamine diet, actually, which has had a massive impact on me. But one of the pieces of the puzzle, I've been banging on a little bit about histamine intolerance for the last year or two, just because it's just been so great for me. One of the pieces of the puzzle that I know I still need to work on, which is why I'm excited to kind of bioptimize a little bit, is the fact that everybody says that, part of the issue with histamine intolerance, whether mild, severe, or anything in between, is the fact that really what you need to do is heal your gut. And once you start to do that, you're not going to get these histamine reactions. And you're going to start, honestly, Wade, if I can eat avocado, chocolate, and red wine again, I'll be a very happy man. That's all I ask. If you can do that for me, then I'll be very happy.
I'm pretty certain we can.
Really?
Yeah, I'm pretty certain that we can, unless there's some odd genetic response inside the body or epigenetics. But you know, epigenetics, which is the science of flipping the switch on or flipping it off, oftentimes with a course of enzymes and the right probiotics and hydrochloric acid, we actually will alter our epigenetic responses, and then we can go back to eating foods that we never dreamed that we could eat before. And that's kind of like what I would say the final stage of the optimization program. If we took a person that's severely compromised, we can generally turn around their digestive health in about 90 days. That's usually the standard. Yeah, your digestive system will recover relatively quickly, and that's the beauty of it. But you got to do the work, and you got to do the right things.
Yeah. That's excellent. That's really great. So, what's the kind of first thing that you would work on? If someone comes to you, and I'm guessing that most people listening to this, they're probably not severely compromised. There will be some people who are really in a bad way, but most people are like, look, I know I eat quite a bit of crap every once in a while, and I know that I probably could squeeze another 10-15% out if I was really to kind of up my game. How would you kind of start looking at bioptimizing their gut?
Great question. Well, I'm going to give a really quick rundown of how digestion works on a very layman's terms so people understand. So first, we taste, touch, sense, smell the food, and that starts to create an actual activation inside our bodies. The second part is we start chewing the food, and what our body starts to figure out what's actually in that food. Now, after the food has been chewed, it goes down the esophagus into the upper cardiac portion of the stomach. So the stomach actually works in two steps. The first 30 to 60 minutes is when the enzymes present in the food start breaking that food down. Now, of course, humans, we eat most of our food cooked, or it's been irradiated, even fruits and vegetables, so that the enzymes don't break it down. Just so people know, enzymes are responsible from everything from thinking to blinking. There's over 25,000 different chemical responses in the body from enzymes. Enzymes are the difference between stones, people, and plants. Okay, and they are accelerators. They basically accelerate chemical reactions inside the body. So your ability to think, to do muscular movement, to run all your organs is directly correlated to the totality of the enzymes that you have available to you at any given time. And that was documented by Dr. Edward Howe, who wrote a book called Enzyme Nutrition and Food Enzymes for Health and Longevity, because he determined that the amount of enzymes that you had available was actually concordant with how long an organism would live. That's pretty interesting as well. Right. Now, see, so if we look at bears are omnivores. They'll eat a salmon or they'll eat blueberries in a raw state, and they get all the enzymes along with all the nutrients. A tiger going out to eat a zebra in the morning, it knocks down the zebra. It eats the entrails where the enzymes and probiotics are present. Then it eats the carcass, right, in a live state. And if you're a herbivore, let's say a horse or a cow, you'll go eat the most enzymatically rich sprouted grasses and things like that. That's what it prefers to eat. So it gets that food into the body and it gets the enzymes. So the problem is we didn't define food properly. When we defined food, we didn't put enzymes in it. We didn't put probiotics as part of that. And that is what we naturally ate. If you eat a carrot out of my mom's garden, it's got bacteria on it that actually would maybe produce, for example, B12. Yeah. It comes from the organisms out from the plant, right? Animals get supplemented with B12. Oftentimes, farm animals, it's not necessarily that they produce it nowadays, is they're supplemented, and that's why some people will choose those diets, meat-based diets, say to get your B12, where vegans will have a trouble, but it's just the microbes. So that's the first stage. At about 30 to 60 minutes, what happens then is your body will start to release hydrochloric acid. And the hydrochloric acid will do two things. Number one, it'll disinfect the food from parasites, bacteria, viruses, any kind of pathogenic organism that could compromise your life. The second stage is it actually changes the pH. And as that pH starts to go to more acidic, some of the enzymes present in the food will be deactivated and others will be activated. So they work in different pH ranges. Once that's completed, and that churning has happened, then the food travels out of the stomach, and then you'll add minerals and vitamins, or minerals particularly called bicarbonate buffers, to buffer the acid. Because if you don't buffer the acid, you start burning holes in your stomach. If you don't have enough hydrochloric acid, the little esophageal sphincter stays open on the top, and you start getting things like acid reflux and heartburn. Not because you don't have enough hydrochloric acid, not because you have too much, it's because you don't have enough hydrochloric acid. And people are getting proton pumps, or they're taking TUM, or they're taking antacid pills or whatever. But the reality is that's actually further compromising your digestive system. And then the final stage is the food, now that it's been broken up and chopped up, so it's like cutting the grass, it needs to be mulched. And that's done by the probiotics. So we have what's called the microbiome, or your gut flora, sometimes it's called. But basically, in your intestinal tract, there's 10% good bacteria, 10% bad, and 80% opportunists. And based on the food that you eat, that's going to be changing all of the time. So your body becomes acclimatized to the food that you eat, and will feed some of the good bacteria, and it'll starve the other ones. Now, some of them will live, they'll stay kind of in a semi-dormant stage inside the biofilm. So you might hear about biofilm and stuff, and so they'll become reactivated when the opportunity presents. So this area, then that final thing, it's like mulching the grass, and then we'll let you convert your food into either energy units or building blocks, and then the final stage is that peristaltic contraction will remove that. So where people run into problems, no enzymes in their food, so they require to take enzymes out of their body. And when they do that, they don't have enough enzymes for their joints, their brain, their other bodily functions. That's why fasting is so popular as a healing modality, because every animal in the world, when it gets hurt, fasts so it can use its natural production of enzymes to heal the body.
Right.
Second thing, by the time we're 40, most of us have less than 30% of not only the enzymes that we had when we were a child, but also the hydrochloric acid when we were as a child. So people start getting acid reflux or heartburn, or they start to notice they can't have that glass of wine anymore because it gives a burning sensation, or an inflammatory.
Yeah.
Right? These are the things that come up. And then finally, because of the widespread use of antibiotics, foods that don't have the natural probiotics present on it because of irradiation and antibacterial methodologies of the modern world, which had its benefits. But there's consequences and benefits to everything. We've altered our gut microbiome, high levels of stress, looking into blue light all the time with our computers and our phones and all this stuff has compromised how that microbiome works. And that oftentimes allows people not have enough energy, or they're not able to recover and build their bodies. And as we age, the whole system just tends to degenerate, especially if you're living in the modern world. I mean, who has, not everybody can be living in Hawaii eating perfectly fermented fruits and vegetables and growing things and taking everything out of the garden every day. That's the modern world we live in. So those are the challenges. And so the three areas where people get the most benefit: enzymes before meals, hydrochloric after, and then probiotics, depending on the probiotic, either in the evening or at different times during the day, depending on the strain.
Right. So kind of from a guinea pig perspective, I know I've got some. You've sent me some of the BiOptimizers stuff. So I should start taking enzymes before I eat, and that will kind of start doing the job that I might not be doing very well myself.
Well, this is the beauty of this, because I'll give people a real world experience. Most people have had like Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner or whatever, and you go over to the family house, you have the huge meal.
Yeah.
And then you have the next helping, then grandma brings out the pie or whatever. And then after you had this huge feast, what happens is everybody's kind of going into the living room or whatever, and someone's diving for the couch, someone's passed out in the chair, someone's on the floor, drool coming out of their mouth. Well, why is that? When you just ate all this food, why can't you go out and do a workout or run a marathon? Because what happens is your body takes all the blood, all the enzymes it's using for metabolic processes, and uses that whole capacity to try and break down your food. So it just shuts down everything else in your body. So by taking enzymes beforehand, what happens is your body doesn't have to use its own enzyme production capability, and you can break down that food without it, which is the natural way that we're supposed to be eating food. The problem is when you don't have enough enzymes in your body, as that diminishes over time, there's no way to replenish that unless you're using exogenous outside the body enzymes. And so that's what we've been doing. And there's all sorts of reports of, massive enzyme supplementation and I'm talking like super physiological dosages to correct a variety of conditions. And I've experimented in those areas as well. So then the final stage is getting your microbiome in order. Now, the problem with most probiotics on the market today is many of them are not shown to be maintainable in the gastrointestinal tract. The other thing is, for example, my business partner's on a ketogenic diet. I'm a vegetarian. Our microbiomes are going to be radically different based on the diets that we have. And so we wanted to develop a probiotic that was able to address virtually everybody. And what we did is we went off and took a probiotic strain. We threw it in a toxic soup, ran a sine wave through it to keep it alive. And then the remaining ones, we then grew on special mediums to create a super probiotic. We got a patent for it. And so we're going to see probably more of those kind of super probiotics developed in the world today because we're combating, the super bacteria, for example, that are in hospitals that have been subjected to antibiotics for so many years.
Yeah.
So those strains now are resistant to antibiotics. So what do you need to counter that? You need to build up you need to kind of aggressively train, if you will. That's why we call it the Navy SEALs of probiotics. You need to address probiotics that, number one, can be maintainable in the gastrointestinal tract, can go off and kill pathogens like viruses, or can wipe out other bacteria, can kill off these things so that you can recalibrate your microbiome better to your diet. And that's why some people will do better on some diets than others. It's just what's available to them in the bacteria. But I believe that when you're bio-optimized, that you could switch to almost any diet and do extremely well, provided your digestive capacity is okay. Oftentimes people will switch to a diet because of compromised digestion.
Well, that
such
maybe,
as yourself.
Yeah, maybe that is the case, because I certainly noticed that certain diets and certain ways of eating suit me a lot better than others. And actually, just listening to your talk, this podcast arose because I kind of got very ill 5 or 6 years ago. But the year or two before that, maybe 2 or 3 years before that, I had a wisdom tooth out. And this is before I knew any of this. And I kind of started to geek out and kind of go to conferences and meet people like yourself. And the wisdom tooth, it didn't kind of quite go to plan. And I had 4 courses of antibiotics in about 6 weeks. Now I look back and I think, that would mess up anybody's digestion for quite a while. That's a pretty ferocious course of antibiotics, isn't it?
Not to mention, if you there's a fellow by the name of Dr. Tennant, he has a great book called Healing is Voltage, and he was a dentist and a medical doctor, and he suggests that your teeth actually work as circuit breakers to your nervous system because all of your teeth are connected to various organs in the body. And what would happen if you get a tooth pulled or you get a root canal, oftentimes the infection will carry over into that particular organ and compromise that organ. Right. So it's amazing. And of course, longevity studies have showed that people who have healthier teeth actually live about 8 years longer than people who don't. So maintaining dental health, and that's a largely part of infection from various bacteria.
Yeah. I know. I mean, it's funny though, because until you know this stuff, you don't know it, do you? That's the thing. And I think that's what I quite like about this podcast. You asked me beforehand, what's your kind of audience? It's people who like to geek out, really, and really get involved in this stuff. But actually, you have to. Because, I mean, all this stuff about the soil and about the stuff that, and hydrochloric acid and enzymes, I mean, most people don't know about it, but they kind of would do well to know about it. So,
this is it's interesting too, because most of our information over the last 100 years has been provided us through the medical establishment. And the beauty of it is the medical establishment is extremely good in acute care situations. You need surgery, you need to set a bone set, all these kind of short, you've been in a car accident, you've had a heart attack. All of those things it's extremely well at. But the average medical doctor has less than 3 hours of nutrition training.
Yeah.
And so they're very smart people with a very small toolbox. And now, thanks to the internet and things like this, we're actually relearning things that were known oftentimes, hundreds of years ago, that was well established by what was the medical establishment then, but that's been modernized and primarily taken over by pharmacology and surgery as the two number one ways to interact and create change in the body. But those all have consequences. And so the thing is how do we work together in conjunction with our current medical system, which is great for acute care? People aren't dying from infection like they used to.
Yeah.
And then, but also providing the health and vitality. And then, of course, the food industry. The food industry has been developed, as you were talking, the ultra-processed foods, which are tasty, convenient, and addict the brain to them, but don't provide the essential nutrients components that require us to actually live healthy. It gives us a nice drug hit, but the reality is it, like any other, recreational drug, it's going to have consequences down the road.
Yeah, I mean, that lost knowledge. I mean, I know you've just been on Bulletproof Radio and you've been on it before as well, haven't you? And I'm a big fan of the Bulletproof diet. I find it a very handy set of guidelines, but just the kind of, the idea of good fats. And I know that the health authorities in this country still list margarine as a healthy alternative, which I mean is unbelievable, really. When apparently its natural color is grey and they have to dye it yellow just to make it look more like butter. I mean, that is insane, really, isn't it? So I mean, all this lost really knowledge. Is. Our grandparents would probably say, "Yeah, a bit of butter would be good for you," and it's much better than margarine. Right, okay. So from a guinea pig perspective, I've got the enzymes. I should be taking them before I eat.
Yeah. Enzymes before, HCl after. And then probiotics. The probiotic that we develop, we prefer people to take it at night. You can also take it with a meal, particularly if you have, if you know that you have a compromised microbiome. So as far as symptomology, if you have a lot of allergic reactions, predisposition for depression, those things are oftentimes related to proteolytic digestion. The enzymes are protease digestion enzymes. Also, if you have a predisposition for diabetes, it's usually amylase. If you have skin issues or nervous system issues, oftentimes it's lipase. You're deficient in one of those enzymes. Just like people heard, like, hey, you need lactase for milk. We all know about that. That's a common element that people have ever since pasteurized milk came out, because whole milk has all the enzymes present. You can break it down. Pasteurized milk doesn't have it, and a lot of people don't produce lactase.
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing across the board. If you got acid reflux, heartburn, or you get ill a lot, like you get every cold that comes by, probably hydrochloric acid is low. And then if you find that you have a lot of gas, a lot of bloating, or you get constipated, or you get the runs, chances are you've got some kind of dysbiosis. In other words, you don't have a good balance in your bacteria. You'll do better on the probiotics. And what most people we do is we say, hey, look, do a whole course, a high-level course for 90 days. You do the first 30 days, you'll go through the transition stage. Oftentimes, you'll have a new relationship with the bathroom for the first couple of weeks.
Oh no, really?
Yeah, and then usually by the second month, people start to notice changes in their skin, more vibrancy, and usually by the third month, they're noticing they're cutting their sleep times down. They're recovering from their exercise better, and it's all because they've improved the delivery of the nutrients to their body. And most people will notice instantaneous, easier digestion. You don't have that full feeling or that bloated feeling after you eat meals and things like that. And that's the first bounce. But the benefits continue to come. And then after 90 days, you kind of titrate down to what's effective for that person. And it's going to vary from person to person.
I mean, there must be some people who try enzymes and probiotics and they don't see results. It doesn't work.
Yeah, and a lot of times that has to do with product quality, how it's been made, how it's directed. So if I can go into a store shelf and I can find bottles of enzymes that would be $10 or 10 pounds and enzymes that would be 100 pounds. And well, why is that? Well, it's largely part because of how they've been produced, how they're performed. Are they a plant-based? Are they an animal-based? Are they a cultured enzyme? What is the science? Do they work in conjunction? Do they have enough amylase, lipase, and protease? Particularly protease is the most expensive one, and a lot of people really chintz out on that one. And you need like 3 different types of protease to work in all the pHs that we talk about. So a lot of companies build products based on, margins, not on mission. And so when I develop the stuff that we did is I was trying to fix my own health. And so I didn't care about the margin. I was just like, I need to fix this. And once I fixed myself, I found other people and we corrected it. And, you know, I always say there's nothing more expensive than a product that doesn't work, whatever you pay for it. And so that's been our philosophy ever since we build either first in class or best in class. And we've been around for 15 years because of it.
I know you know Ben Greenfield, and I spoke to him when he came on the podcast, and I said, you know, like a lot of this stuff costs quite a lot. And he said, when you kind of balance it out, it costs a lot less than all the medical bills you're going to have if you don't look after yourself, which is actually quite a good point. You know, I mean, this certainly shouldn't be seen as elitist, but there is a bit of an investment involved. But yeah, the costs to your kind of life and well-being, and certainly in America, your medical bills as well, is going to be way more if you don't invest a bit of time and money into it now, I suppose.
You know, and that's one of the downsides, I think, of our push button society today. It's getting increasingly more difficult for people to think in terms of long term, whether that's related to their finances, whether that's related to their health, or whether that's related to their relationships. If you get in a relationship, you're going to have to invest time, energy. It's better to go get counseling. It's better to work things out because of the devastation of that. It's better to, you know, save in advance and use an investment program that allows you to set up for when you're not working as much, you're not in those high income years. And of course, with health, it's no different. And one of my pet peeves, and I hope one day to change this, and that is the cost of being healthy is growing exponentially these days. And that to me is a disservice, and it's demonstrative of a medical system that is not actually dealing with the causes, but it's more treating the symptoms. And so we look in the United States, which spends more money on healthcare than like virtually all the countries of the world combined. And now it's shown for every dollar they spend in healthcare, the actual health of the population goes down. So that's a very poor track record and very indicative. I mean, go to a medical hospital and look what they serve people who have just got out of surgery or an illness or taking cancer treatments. There is no science based on what that person is being fed. And so for my colleagues in the medical industry, it's not an attack on them, but they oftentimes will say, well, where's the scientific validation of, you know, taking enzymes or probiotics and stuff? And I say, well, what's the scientific validation of the meals you feed people when you go to the hospital?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they're done. And so it's the idea is to work together so that we can keep people out of hospitals and keep people at high performance, productive citizens, because there's nothing more expensive than being sick.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So, okay, well, I mean, is that it then? I'll just take a few of them and I'll be fine.
Well, that's the beginning for people.
Presumably, I shouldn't be eating Cheerios every meal and all that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can't supplement your way out of a bad diet.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, you have to choose a diet that's right for you, your lifestyle, your genetics, and what makes you feel the best. That's one thing. Secondary thing, I think there's specific components. So those are the three, what I would call the foundational components. People that have gluten intolerance, we actually have an enzyme called Gluten Guardian. It's I
think you sent me some of that as well. I'm looking forward to trying that because I don't actually eat gluten. So every once in a while you think, is there any gluten in this meal? Because they don't seem quite sure. I think that might be quite helpful.
Well, there's all kinds of things. Like, for example, red wine has gluten in it, and, you know, soy sauce has gluten in it. You know, pickles can have gluten, mustard can have gluten. And if you go out to a restaurant, oftentimes they're cross-contaminated. So people aren't having a reaction to the food. They're having a reaction to the cross-contamination of gluten within those things.
Right.
So people take that before, if they go out to dinner or social occasions where they may get exposed if they're gluten intolerant. It's really great. And then we also developed a Capex, which has more fat lipase-based enzymes, so 4 different lipases. And that also that's a 3-stage kind of product. It's kind of a very novelty product. So people on the ketogenic diet or high-fat diets really like the Capex in the morning. But that's more than just the digestive enzyme. That also increases hydrochloric acid and bile production in the body, and also transports fats into the mitochondria and then speeds up mitochondria energy production by about 20%. So I take 4 of those in the morning. So those are kind of the specialty products that, you know, can advance. And then we also have a cleansing product called ConstiCleanse, and another one for parasites. I had a parasite issue one time, so I had to put all these herbs together to kill the parasite that was eating my eye. Literally, it was terrible.
Oh dear.
And so, yeah, so I had to go off and get all these Chinese herbs from Chinatown and figure this all out, cook this stinky old stuff up.
So that's your passion project, that product, is it?
Well, you know, everything that we've developed is because we had to solve a problem.
Yeah.
Somebody had a problem. Either myself had a problem, Matt had a problem, or someone we knew had a problem.
That's great.
And we were like, can we fix this problem? And it turns out we can. And that's really rewarding. And that's why we're on this mission, because, you know, at the end of the day, I get juiced up. We get testimonials every week. And, you know, we have to look at the numbers and all that. But I'm a heart-based guy. I used to be a personal trainer. Matt used to be a personal trainer. And all the numbers aside, I get excited when I hear about the little old grandmother who's 67 years old, and she's been suffering from IBS for 30 years, and now it goes away.
Yeah.
There's nothing that we read them out in our meetings on Monday mornings to our team and stuff. I love those stories because I go, you know, I'm making a difference in the world, and that's really important.
Yeah. I mean, it's really exciting. I'm looking forward to kind of giving it all a go. And I don't want it to be too much of an advert, but we're going to have you and me and BiOptimizers are going to be having a partnership over the next couple of months. I'm going to bioptimize my gut. We're going to see how it goes. There is one other thing that I wanted to ask you about in terms of what you guys do, and that is, I've been a big fan of magnesium for ages, and I know that sometimes I go to bed and uncontrollably and seemingly randomly, my legs will be jerking in different directions, and I need to take magnesium. But I have found that my gut, it can be kind of quite dodgy on the gut. So you guys have got magnesium that, I mean, shall I be giving that a go?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, if you look at, and you can go look at whether it's Dr. Sanjay Gupta or Dr. McCullough, virtually we have a massive magnesium we just don't have enough magnesium in our food. The deficiency is rampant across the world, and that's again going to food production and food distribution. The other thing is our modern world with so much electrical, Wi-Fi stimulation, and blue light actually puts a stress. And magnesium is responsible for over 350 different reactions inside the body, and is a critical component in enzymatic reactions. And so what happened? Again, another thing happened to me. It's like, I was working too much, using caffeine as a stimulant to keep things going, you know, pulling 16 hours days for about 2 years, not taking a day off and everything. And I burnt myself out. And so when we did all my diagnostics, my magnesium levels were in the toilet. So then I found out there's not just magnesium, there's like all these different types of magnesium.
Yeah.
And I attended a lecture, and it was all about magnesium and its impact on the heart, impact on the brain. And there were different types of magnesiums that worked in different parts of the body. And so some of the magnesiums would give you the runs really quickly. Some would affect your brain. Some would affect your heart. Some would affect your nervous system. And so Dr. Charles Poliquin, who trained 27 different professional athletes in like gold medal in different disciplines, he used magnesium with his athletes extensively and used all these different types. And I got fascinated. I dove in it. So I was literally on I had 6 bottles of magnesium that I was taking. I'm trying to do it in divided dosages, because if you take too much, you get the runs, you break the GI barrier. So we went off, and I said, you know, this is crazy. We've got to come up with a better plan. So we went off and manufactured a magnesium product that contains 7 of the most potent magnesiums that deal with each part of the body. And I started taking it. I take 3 grams a day, and at 1 gram in the morning, 1 gram in the afternoon, and 1 gram in the evening. And so I took it, Matt took it, and then we released it, which is going to be coming out soon to the mainstream. And people started taking this. It's like, wait, I'm now sleeping, and now I don't have muscle cramping. Now I have I was constipated before, now I have regular things. And all these things that I didn't even anticipate. I kind of heard about it's good for this or that, but the feedback that we've got from that is kind of extraordinary. So we're in the early stages of seeing how that's going, because we just released a product a little while ago, and people who love magnesium love it. And then the good thing was, I had to take a year off coffee.
Oh my God!
You know, I had to take a year off coffee, and so now I can have coffee, and I don't have a strong reaction, because I used to get just too hyper from it. And that's a good sign. If you're really, really overstimulated by caffeine or things, that's a good indication that you've cooked your magnesium. Or if you find that you get really anxious about stressful situations, chances are you have a magnesium deficiency. And you can do the best way to do is you can go to Spectra nutrition test, and I would recommend everybody does that. It's a great way that they'll take your blood, they spin it, and so they can actually see how you absorb the various products in your body. Because when you do just a straight up blood test, you're only seeing what's in the serum levels. You're not actually seeing what's in the tissue. But with doing a Spectra cell test, you can go in and find out how your body's absorption. And based on all that, they can show you what your nutritional deficiencies are. And then you can kind of customize your supplementation program based on that. So it'll cost you maybe $300 or $400, maybe from $400 for that test. So I don't know what that comes out into pounds.
Yeah,
but that
400
test,
would be about £300. Yeah.
Yeah, but that test will save you maybe thousands of dollars in various supplements. And so I suggest everybody to do that, because then they can go, oh, you know what? I need B12 and I need magnesium and I need selenium. And so you can alter your diet, or you can take the appropriate nutritional supplements and then test it, say 6 months or a year later, and you'll actually see the differences based on your diet. So you're getting real world specifics on what that person is deficient in. And that to me has been extraordinary for saving time and also getting the maximum benefit from whatever you are spending on your supplements.
I'll try the magnesium. We'll see if I get a dodgy gut from it, because I have had a dodgy gut a few times from different magnesiums in the past. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, that's a good one. So again, divided dosages and titrate up. So start at a 0.5 gram in divided dosages, and then move up until you hit the runs. Then that's when you come back.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, look, obviously we're on Skype today, but I hope we can meet in person at some point soon, maybe at one of these health conferences. I always think they're more like festivals than conferences, and I tell people who haven't been, you should go, because it's a lot of fun, and there's parties and there's all sorts going on. It's great, isn't it? So maybe we'll see each other at one of those.
Well, there's a big one in the UK in this September. I think it's called the Bioptimization Summit, or the Biohacking Summit, or something like that.
The Health Optimization Summit.
Yes, that's it. That's the one.
And you guys are coming to that.
I'm actually one of the keynote speakers there. So we'll have a booth that we're hanging out there. So for anybody that listens to it, please come up. I love meeting our listeners. Yeah. I can't wait to hang out. And it's been a while since I've been in the UK, so I'm super excited to be there. And I'm looking forward to meeting as many people as possible and hearing their stories and getting into all the geeky stuff that we do on the side.
Well, that is great news. Yeah, that's that conference, that summit, is run by my friend Tim, and we recorded a podcast at the summit last year, so we'll record one in person when you come over, and we'll have a laugh and maybe go to the natural wine party in the evening as well together.
Sounds great. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, good. So obviously the question I ask everyone on this podcast is, what is one book that you'd recommend? It can be in the area we've talked about, it can be in a completely different area. Sometimes people recommend fiction books or a book that they read when they were a child. And what is one tip that you would have for living with more energy and vitality? And you've mentioned those two words a few times, so that's what this podcast is about. I'm very interested to know what you'll say.
Whew. Just to narrow it down to one book.
I know, it's so hard, but it doesn't have to be your all-time favorite. It can just be something that springs to mind now, because I'll probably ask you the same question in 6 months anyway.
I would say, for most people, Letting Go by Dr. David Hawkins. He wrote a whole series starting with Power versus Force, but one of his last books was Letting Go. And I think that's about how to let go of the things that aren't serving you anymore, and the process that's about it. I think it's a fantastic book for anybody.
That sounds excellent. That sounds like something I need to do. It's one of my themes, to let go. And what about one tip then?
That would be a regular concentrated breathing practice. So sometimes that may be meditation. It could be just, Wim Hof breathing. But I think that we really underestimate the power of our breath. And I think that can revitalize us more than anything. And it's absolutely free. Yeah.
What breathing do you do?
I have a meditation process that I learned from Paramahansa Yogananda, the author of Autobiography of Yogi, and I actually do deep breathing. And there's a variety of different breaths I do, but every morning I get up and I do an energization with various breaths and exhalation, and then I do a meditation practice with several different types of breath to achieve different brain states. And we're going to 40 years of Zen this week to see. So we actually get feedback in real time about the different breaths. Yeah, and how it'll alter you in different brain states, and you get to see this isn't hocus pocus. This isn't some weird stuff. You're getting scientific evidence that this stuff actually works and is effective and is measurable now. So it's a great time to be around.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah, I did that a couple of years ago. Are you actually taking the program?
Oh yeah. So originally I started in Biocybernaut, and then with Dr. Hart, and then now we're over to Dave Asprey and 40 Years of Zen, and play around with his equipment as
Great.
well.
Oh,
Yeah.
fantastic. Okay, so this is just brilliant. What a great. So is that this week?
Yeah, we leave in a couple days. We're going there, and I just go off the radar for a week, and then we're like, we talked about digestion and stuff, but we're total biohacking nerds. So we've got so much gear. Like we're taking like all these suitcases, and we've got beds, and we've got things that hook up in our brain, and we're taking all these other agents to accelerate our connection. It's crazy, and we're just gonzo on it, and that's why I can't wait to meet people, because we can kind of get into all that stuff when I over in the UK.
I mean, I'm jealous of you going to 40 Years of Zen. It was just a brilliant week. I really loved it. That was brilliant. So, well, look, have a good time with that. We will kind of reconvene, and I'll let you know how I get on with the kind of gut guinea pig stuff. And obviously, I know you guys have set up a page on your site as well, which is bioptimizers.com/zestology. And there's a discount code Zestology10 for 10% off. And I should point out that BiOptimizers is spelt in the American form with a Z, not an S, because us Brits would spell it with an S. So it's bioptimizers.com/zestology. Thanks for sorting. I really do believe that happy gut equals a happy life. You know, it's definitely a pretty good rule for living, that, isn't it?
It sure is. It is. And, it's such a key component for neurochemical production in our body to make us happy and feel good. And so just thank you for having us here. It's really great. And by the way, just so people know, if they do try any of our products, we have a 365-day guarantee. Try it. If it doesn't work for you, if it doesn't, you're not blown away and it doesn't correct whatever condition, we'll just easily give your money back. And it's like we take all the risk, because I don't want to profit from anybody that didn't get the results they were hoping for.
Good. And I'll provide honest feedback as well. I mean, I'm really looking forward to trying this stuff. And if some things work better than others, I'll definitely relay that. But I think it's focusing on the gut is quite hard to know what to do, and that's why it's been good to talk about it. But Wade, listen, what a great week you've got ahead. Amazing.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Lucky thing, and lovely to talk to you. And we'll speak again, maybe in London or maybe before.
You got it.
Thank you to Wade, and thank you for listening. If you're interested in being a gut guinea pig like me and getting involved, then you can head to bioptimizers.com/zestology. I know I already reminded you, but it's BiOptimizers with a Z. And see how you go with some of those supplements, and let's have a play with it. Let's see what happens. It's since I recorded this podcast, I've already started taking some of the supplements, and I am enjoying it a lot, and I feel good. But it's still early days, and I want to provide kind of honest feedback. So over the next month or so, you'll get some honest feedback. In the meantime, head to bioptimizers.com/zestology, and let's have a play with this stuff. Right then, over the next few weeks, Dr. Chris Shade, Dr. Andrew Hill, and we also have the founder of Paleo Effects coming on Zestology as well. So some really big name guests over the next few weeks. Hope you'll join me for that. And in the meantime, if you haven't quite had enough Zestology for today, you can head to TonyWrighton.com and get my 3 Zesty Things newsletter each week. Thanks to Wade, thanks to BiOptimizers, and I'll see you next week.